Sim Racing chassis in this video is the Next Level Racing GT Ultimate featuring the new motion platform V3. Learn more at nextlevelracing.com. Welcome to Inside Sim Racing and our review of iRacing Dirt. I'm John Sable, joined with Billy Strange, our resident dirt expert, and today we're going to go over the recently released dirt content in iRacing, break it down into multiple categories, and just give our opinions of what we think of it. So before we get to that, let's go ahead and go over the content that is part of iRacing Dirt. There are 5 vehicles and 4 tracks. The vehicles are a dirt version of the Legends, a dirt version of the Street Stock, a dirt NASCAR Trucks version, and then late model and winged sprint cars, each of which have 3 different versions, with essentially the major difference being 3 different engines. And then on the track side, we have a dirt version of USA Speedway, and then we have Volusia, Williams Grove, and Eldora Speedway. So with that kind of put out there, let's go ahead and jump right into it and give some opinions. And first I'm going to start off with graphics. And Billy, normally when we talk graphics, it comes down to just, how pretty does it look and how well does it run? But when it comes to dirt, the graphics make a huge difference in terms of how you race it. So how does iRacing do in terms of that?
Well, iRacing has a surface model. The surface model is really where you're going to see the majority of how the graphics kind of play an integral part in how you race on dirt. As a dirt driver, you're always searching for the moisture, so you really need to be able to see the light versus dark parts in the track. And iRacing has, through their dynamic track model, actually gone ahead and done that. So the lighter parts are drier, there's less traction there. They even go so far as to actually try and model what I would call a black or a blue groove, and then in theory the track can actually lay rubber down, and you can see that in the track as well. It's just one of the main key ingredients in dirt racing that changes it from what you would do on an asphalt oval. And having that graphics package, I guess if you want to put it that way, where we can see the dynamic change in the track, is really one of the biggest key components of this whole dirt experience. Yes, and
so with that said, how well do you think it's executed? Does it feel like, with you being a former winged sprint car driver yourself, does it feel and look right?
I think it looks pretty close. There's no really, I mean, it just depends on the track surface, and I think the only criticism you could have is the canned states that may or may not realistically show like an accurate line wear in the track. And what I mean by that is, if you were to start at a 0% track state in iRacing, that means that the track is prepped as best as it possibly can be all the way across the track. So typically the fastest way around is going to be close to the bottom of the track. As you run that, you're going to go from low to high, and there are some times where I'm curious of how they came up with the line that they did, but that's nitpicking. For the most part, the tracks start in a random state, which is nice. That way you're not always getting the same thing over and over when you do these races. So any little minor grievance I have there is far outweighed by the impressive nature that they've done to the track. And I'm just talking visually. We can get into the physical aspect in a little bit here, but visually speaking, I think it's by far the best we've ever had, in my opinion, and I don't really think you can do a whole lot better.
Yeah, no, I mean, in my opinion, I think it looks great. One thing that I was super surprised by, it runs really well, which, maybe if you're not a oval racer and you do more road courses, maybe you're like, well, duh, it's, these are small half-mile, short and half-mile tracks. It should run well. But if you're more familiar running the stock cars and stuff, still with the grandstands being so close and the pit lane objects, and then, a fair number of cars running pretty close, and then all that detail in the track surfacing, because there is a lot of detail there. I was quite surprised how well it runs. I got my bat behind me, and I'm running a 1070 with a very old 2600 CPU, and I have things turned up really high in my settings, and I'm staying pretty much always above 90 frames per second, which, you know, if you're above that amount, you're pretty much golden in terms of smoothness. And a lot of times I'm running up into the triple digits when I'm out there running around in practice or in a race. So I was very impressed with that. Now, one thing that I don't fully think you see in the graphics package, maybe something I hope they get to more in the future, is there doesn't seem to be much of a visual identity for a cushion. It's more a color change. But it'd be really cool if maybe in the future, maybe that can become a little more of a, I don't know, a physical build up on the racetrack. That'd be pretty sweet to see.
Yeah, right now what it reminds me of is more, it's not like at some of the tracks I run out here on the West Coast, it's not really like what we would call a curb. I mean, you can, you know, and that's from actually digging down into the track. And how they formed what they're doing here is the track has layers to it. And as you wear the layer off, that's when you get to the more drier states, and then from there it can progress into the slick and blue groove, and then possibly rubber. What would be nice at some point is, yes, if we could actually have like a really heavy track that you can see an actual defined cushion line, and not just a color change, but a depth change would be really cool. Again, you know, you're talking like the upper end percentage of what we're looking for now, where, you know, they've made a huge step in getting to this point already. And now we're, you know, like I said, I'm kind of nitpicking, but it's just that little extra that would be cool.
Yeah, no, and that is important to note. I mean, I think overall it looks great, it runs great, all the cars look great. You know, one thing that iRacing has always done really well is the attitude of the cars. And it's really cool to see them, you know, load up in the corners. You see the modifieds, them going in the corners, and the weight transfer and things like that. So I really feel like they nailed that. Cars look great, tracks look great. Yeah, it is getting very nitpicky. And while we are nitpicking, one other thing that I like to see besides maybe potentially a little more of a physical cushion in the future is a little more dust in the air on the dry tracks, because you see dust coming off the cars, but you know, it doesn't necessarily sit in the air like you get sometimes.
It doesn't hang.
It's really dusty.
Yeah, and there was, as a driver out here on the West Coast, we typically have a little heavier track. I think we're known for having some fairly sticky tracks out here, and so on my aspect, it's kind of funny to hear the people kind of panic with the mud hitting the tear off, you know, or the face shield, and then you can pull a tear off. This isn't even close to what we come against or go up against out here on the West Coast. You know, if you go run Chico or Petaluma or some of these other heavier tracks, for those that are of an older generation, West Capitol, I mean, you can't put enough tear offs on. You're pulling 1 to 2 every lap. And I mean, we're not just talking about, oh, there's a little piece of, you know, mud in my way. It's like you can't see, like there's no way to see with as heavy as it is. So as a sprint car driver, it would be cool if when the track's real heavy and the cars are locked down, that, man, you'd have to rip 1 or 2 tear-offs a lap because they're unlimited. But I think the graphical hit, and I think most people would just panic. And it's the same thing with the dust. I've run in races where you can't see. You're looking for the shimmer from the lights hitting the wings going into the turn. And I'm not kidding. You literally can't see going into the turn. You know, you're kind of driving by braille. So, again, you know, does it need to go to that extreme? Probably not. You know, probably for the larger user base, it doesn't need to go that far, but it would be cool.
I think it would be cool to see a little bit more mud, because I feel like that's doable. The dust gets kind of hard, I assume, graphically. I assume, you know, having that sit, you know, that's got to be a little tougher on, you know, running it with our PCs.
Right, it's probably a big resource hog if it does that.
Yeah, I like to think the dust is probably similar to like the smoke, which actually I will say these days in iRacing, it used to be when you get things smoking out there, you know, things would start struggling a bit. But now that they're on DX11, it seems like when there is smoke, it still keeps your frame rate up. So, you know, maybe that's possible. But yeah, I like to see a little more mud if, you know, if the situation calls for it. And then I like to see it be a little more, I guess, dynamic. Like I was running a race and I was under caution, and the guy in front of me lit up the tires, and I didn't really. That was the point where I would expect I get like a bunch of mud thrown on me. So
Right.
especially on a tackier track. So yeah, I think a little more would be cool. But I mean, I definitely can see what you're saying. If they start throwing a whole bunch out there, then people might get a, whoa, that's too much.
I was going to say the majority of people when I'm running a race, the majority of people that aren't familiar with dirt track racing, they're already like, oh my gosh, there's so much. I'm like, this isn't even a lot. This is like, for me, that's like a dry track, like how much it's throwing up.
Yeah, that's funny. One other thing I want to note on the graphics before we move on to our next topic, the tracks at night, man, they look really good. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if anything's being done differently here, but man, they just really come alive, and I think look fantastic. I don't necessarily know why versus other tracks or versus a pavement oval, but they just look great.
Right, it does. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the contrast in the colors on the track or what, but it definitely seems to really come alive, when you're flying around Eldor or Williams Grove or, even Volusia. It just, in the real world, it's always cool because, you roll out and you get like this almost tunnel-like effect because the area around the track is dark. And depending on the racetrack that you go to, some lighting is really good and some isn't so great. And it almost makes you feel like you're going faster. So they captured that pretty well, I think, in iRacing. I mean, like I said, you're flying around Eldor, or my favorite track is Williams Grove in iRacing right now. So flying down those straightaways, the track's a paperclip, and you just feel like you're screaming with the 410 going into the turn. I think they did a really nice job with it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So let's put a pin on that for graphics. Overall, sounds like we both really like it. A couple things maybe for future, but we are getting nitpicky overall. Really nice. Next topic, let's talk about damage, because this is a topic that honestly we don't hit on enough in sim racing, and it's important. And in terms of what racing I've done on dirt, I've found it to be important because there's definitely some rubbing out there. So, Billy, what's your take on the damage model, and does it feel believable? What do you think overall?
So it depends on the user base, I guess you're going for. I think they've hit a nice balance. Is it realistic? No. You should not be able to bounce off of walls in other cars the way you can, especially with the sprint car. Stock cars, yeah, that's not bad. I found some inconsistencies as far as where you have damage can really mess up your car, where you're kind of like, you get that meatball flag and you're kind of like, really? I did all this over here, but that's what got me the meatball. It's just minor little inconsistencies. I think the problem I have right now is, and they may have already patched this by the time this airs, but the wings, when they do come off the sprint car, the arrow does not change. So you essentially can go just as fast without the wing. And let me tell you, there's no way on earth that can happen. Because when you lose the wing in the real world, I mean, even at a little quarter-mile track, you lose that left sideboard going into the turn. I've seen guys, anticipating that's going to be there, and they just sail right off the track. The left sideboard will fold over or something. Something's weak in the wing. And, I mean, they'll just sail right off the track because there's nothing to hold the car anymore. You're not prepared. It's not set up to do that. Same thing with the nose wing. You lose the nose wing, and it's like the front end's not even there anymore. So, that would be my biggest gripe. Again, as far as the front ends folding up, the damage that the cars can take, iRacing is in a weird position because you have the really hardcore fan base, which I would say in this instance includes me, that want to see, some amount of contact with that front end, and it's going to fold up. But on the other hand, you are racing. It is a simulation. It's not the real world. And I think the balance that they have with there's just enough contact to not really kill the car, but you can still have heavy contact in it, and it's going to mess something up. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how to score this, because I'm sure some people want more. Some people probably want less. What do you think?
Yeah, from someone who obviously doesn't have any real-world experience in this, there are times where I'm a little surprised, especially with a sprint car, how well it does, I guess, bounce off the walls. I mean, it's like, there's times where I get into it, I'm like, well, maybe I just rub the right rear tire against it, which I feel like there is sometimes that it just do that, and it feels pretty, I guess, what I would think would be realistic. But yeah, overall, I don't think it's too bad. And I mean, one thing I do want to state, and in part why we're doing a review of Dirt, because we haven't reviewed iRacing in, I don't know, I feel like 8 years here on this channel. That, you know, overall, I think iRacing probably has one of the best damage models in sim racing. Mostly, partly because there is a damage model, because I mean, so many titles out there just really don't have much of a damage model. It's actually, I was thinking about it while thinking about this video, and it's actually kind of sad. And then iRacing is, we've seen a preview video here recently, they have a new damage model that's coming that's supposed to be more realistic.
Right.
But what they have now, I don't think it does, I don't think it does a bad job. It's cool to see the cars get bent up. I feel like for the most part those look about right. The super late models, going in and banging the right rear quarter panel against the wall and seeing all that crinkle up looks cool. I was a bit surprised how much you can lean on one another, but I don't know. I'd have to defer to you if that's right. But
yeah, you can. I mean, you can. It depends on the car, but yeah, I think the fendered cars are you tend to lean on each other more. But the super late models in particular, they do use a lot of that aero, and when you hit that back quarter panel, it'll mess it up. It will not drive the same. So I think there's a little bit more Rubbins racing in this. It's you kind of get into the stock car territory, the same thing. So yeah, I don't think that's that far off. I think if you're gonna point a finger at something, it would be the sprint car.
Gotcha. Well, I do think when it comes to sprint car, when I've seen people wreck and you see people go over, iRacing has a bit of a moment of inertia issue. Some of the crash physics, we've seen it with the
Yeah.
Delora Indy cars just spinning forever, and that's always fun to be in one of those, especially when you have a motion rig. But it seems like when you see the sprint cars tip over here, they seem fairly realistic. I've ridden up on the wall and gone over, and it looks a lot more at place here with the sprint car. The only thing that I don't care for is when you have a big crash like that, you'll see like the axle come flying up or the tire flying up.
Yeah, they have an issue with the whole axle going through or the tire going through the fender, or like in the sprint car, the rear axle will just come through the tail tank. Which can happen in the real world, but it looks completely different, and it's not a pleasant experience because fuel goes everywhere.
Yeah.
There you go. They should have fire. They should have some sort of fire mechanic in there. No, we don't want to do that.
Well, before you know, a helicopter will be coming, and
yeah. Perfect. Inside jokes on Inside Sim Racing.
Yes. So, okay, well, I think that's a good place to leave it there on the damage model. Sounds like some good stuff. There's some stuff that could be done to make it a little more, maybe a little more hardcore, and we'll see if maybe that's something that's updated in the future. And like we said, that new damage model that's going to come whenever, I'm sure that's going to be a major progression ahead for the entire sim, not just for the dirt content.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, let's move on to sounds. So, Billy, how do you think the cars overall, especially the newer ones, let's not worry as much about like the trucks and the legends and stuff like that, but especially with the modifieds and the sprint cars, how do they sound to you?
They're late models.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's why you're here.
I think overall they have a good sound. My only criticism with and forgive me, late model fans, forgive me because I'm not as familiar with those, even though I've been around them. As far as I think the closest I've gotten to is helping somebody back one off of a trailer because their driver wasn't there, and it had There's something with the clutches, like, and I don't remember what it was, but I had to figure out it's opposite to get the car to move or whatever it is. Somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong, but there was something weird with the clutch. Anyway, that's the closest I've ever gotten to, driving a late model. I think they sound good. The sprint car, I'm going to speak more on the sprint car end. It sounds close, but there is a certain crack, like this crackle, like this thump that those motors have, those engines have, that it doesn't quite catch. I mean, when you're sitting there and it's idling, it has like this uneven lope to the motor, and especially a 410. I mean, it's just nasty. And when you crack the throttle when they're not in gear, it's just rap, 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 because there's no flywheel, there's no nothing. It's so it's good. How about that?
Okay, so if you had to give it a percentage level of where it's at, what would you give it?
85.
Okay.
Yeah, it's somewhere in there. Like I said, it's close, but it's still. It's funny because there's at certain points at certain RPM levels, like it sounds really close. And some people were complaining about how the 360 has like this little whistle warble at the end when it's on song. That's actually very realistic because if you go and watch like a sprint car qualifying, you kind of want that little bit of that warble or whistle at the end. Because that's just when the car is hustling going into the turn. It has this, it's a very odd sound to describe. And that is actually not that far off of what it sounds like. So at points, it sounds really close. And then at other times, it's like, yeah, you're almost there.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I'm going to defer to you on this one. I mean, for my untrained ears, overall, it sounds pretty good. I can see what you're saying, though, that maybe it needs a little more inconsistencies or some pops there. That's something that, I kind of tend to always default here on the show that, like, Race Room's always our favorite audio, and that's something they do really well. In my book, I've iRacing, catching up to them and being number 2 out there. So no, I think that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's good, just not. I know I'm not trying to be overcritical. Again, I'm getting nitpicky about it. So
well, sure. When you say it's 85% there, I mean, it's that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move to some meat and potatoes now, and let's talk physics. So, Billy, do these cars drive? Well, we can say the sprint cars. Do the sprint cars drive how you remember the wing sprint car driving? And then, what's your take on these other vehicles that you haven't driven in real life, but you're familiar with dirt racing? And I want to add, you also did a fair amount of beta testing. Which also means if you have complaints, then you can just blame yourself because it's your fault.
Right. No. Yeah, I know from the testing that we did. We went through so many different tire models, and what they were trying to accomplish with the tire model is really incredible. I mean, the data, you only have so much data on a tire, and they have these programs that they kind of put all their information in, and it says, okay, this is what it's supposed to be like. And trying to get a program or a model rather to understand how a dirt tire works, let alone a standard asphalt tarmac tire, it is really difficult. These tires flex a lot, they move a lot, they're so soft, they're so thin. It was a challenge just trying to get them to go straight down the straightaway. That if you've ever driven the sprint car in iRacing, especially recently, I don't like it. Like the asphalt car, I don't like it. It does not drive correct to me. And they had a similar problem with the sprint car. And we worked on it a lot. So overall, it's close. It's really, really close. However, they've done it so that they can get you to quote-unquote feel the bite, the side bite going into the corner and then coming off the turn, that over the limit gradient, as I've now like to call it, where the tire is still spinning, but there is still some traction. They've done really, really well. I mean, and if you go from the tacky to the slick and leave your foot at it, it'll get the car sideways and it'll light the tires up, but you're just not automatically facing the opposite direction, which is realistic. I mean, you can't, if you're at Eldora and the track's slick, you can't be full throttle. Again, they've got to find a way to kind of balance the hardcore versus the majority of the people, and I think they've done a really good job. Me personally, I don't think the car is actually, especially the 410, I don't think it's as violent as it is in the real world. The 410, especially when it's grabbing traction, it's really hard to hang on to. You've really got to make sure you've got your momentum up and really have committed going through the corner. So, for instance, you'll rarely see a car in iRacing where if you roll out of the throttle in the center of the turn with the 410 on a hooked up track, it won't pick the front end up. Because what happens is your tire speed slows down enough where you need it to spin to get through the turn because you have a solid rear axle. So both tires are driving. When you roll out of the throttle, it's actually gaining traction because you slowed the tire speed down. It should try to pick the front end up. And that doesn't happen. And it's probably because, well, I know it was because for most people, it was really hard to drive. I kind of missed that part of it because it made it really, really exciting. But I can understand on the other end trying to make it so that, the majority of people can get around the track. So again, we're talking this fine line of how realistic do we want to be with this? Yeah, I don't know how to describe this. Is it realistic? Sort of, if that makes sense. I'm not, again, this is like this is like 95% there, if that makes sense. We'll do it that way. It's like 95% there. I don't know if they want that last 5%.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So, outside of the sprint cars, does everything else, as far as you can tell, feel right? I will say, for my opinion, just to toss it in there for what it's worth, as someone who hasn't done this, I mean, I totally agree with you with the rear tire and the partial traction, and of course, really dependent on where you're at on the track. For my untrained feet, hands, everything, it feels pretty sweet to me. It definitely feels like there's been some nice progress
awesome.
made on dirt.
I mean, I don't mean to downplay it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, again, this is the best thing we've ever had, and they did a fantastic job. I hope people don't misconstrue what I'm saying and, totally poo-pooing on it and downplaying it. I mean, they did an amazing job.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it right there. So sounds like a good spot for physics. Next up, car setups. And again, definitely going to defer this one to you. How's the garages? It makes sense, the changes, is it, how are the cars rolling out the baseline setups? When you go and make an adjustment that you would think make the car faster on a tacky track versus a slick track, is that properly happening? Are you able to go quicker when you make those adjustments? What say you?
Again, it's really close. I don't know much about like late model setup and stuff, so I can't speak to that. The late model doesn't do anything I'm not expecting it to do, so I change very little. We're talking tire pressures, maybe a shock adjustment, but I'm not well versed enough in setting up a late model. But as far as the sprint car goes, the baseline is odd to me. 9 pounds in the right rear. I don't know if they're measuring that at when the tire gets hot, but I've never rolled out in a 410 even on a super heavy track with 9 pounds in the right rear. On a quarter mile short track, I've never had 9 pounds in the right rear. It's just never happened. 8 is more realistic. So the baseline is not... There's parts of it that are and parts of it that aren't. So I don't know how, again, nitpicky we want to get here, but what you do change in the car makes sense. So you kind of have to, in my brain, from what I know, I kind of have to just get rid of the numbers that it's showing me versus the real world and focus on the change. And when you make the change, then it does what it's supposed to do. So in that sense, that's realistic. If I change, if I do a tie down in the left front shock, or if I change a bar in the right rear, it acts accordingly like it should. You change the wing angle, the wing slider, you can work during the race. All that works like it should. I just think like the air pressures and stuff are a little off as far as the number goes to get it drivable. But beyond that, it seems like it works all right.
Gotcha. Yeah. Someone who's myself kind of stuck a little more towards the baseline, which has allowed me to be, kind of be competitive enough, which is always nice. It's not like I'm going out there and just wrecking loose or, plowing the wall down because I'm tight. It is cool to go out to the baseline setup and then adjust the wing during a race. That is something that I'll play around with a fair amount. And I can tell a difference when I do adjust the wing angle. So that's a really cool thing that you have on the sprint cars.
Yeah, I think the baselines right out of the box are really close. So, don't mess with those too much. They've done a good job at getting it so where the cars are, for the most part, drivable. If you're half a second off the pace, you probably need to find a different line or adjust your driving style some.
Hey, why are you picking on me?
It's unless there's no I think it's the sprint car, the 360 and the 410 have a slick and a tacky setup or something like that. But if it doesn't, track dries out, try dropping a pound in the right rear. Maybe drop the left rear. You can start changing your tube heights, so you're taking turns in and out, which changes the ride height of the car. If you don't know what you're doing there, I wouldn't mess with it too much. The tire pressures seem to make a nice change in the car.
Okay, so I think we will leave it there on setups. And as I look at my notes here again, last kind of topic, and then we'll give a final thoughts. Let's talk about the racing that we've experienced as we're here in the first handful of weeks of dirt oval racing being out in iRacing. This was a poll question that we had on one of our recent live shows, and just Billy, from your experiences, how has the racing been? Has it been better than expected? Have you experienced a lot of cautions? What's your overall feel of how people have adapted to this mostly different form of racing for most people?
Yeah. I think that, I kind of came into it with a different expectation, knowing how to drive on dirt and them getting so close. I was instantly comfortable with what was going on, no matter the car or the scenario, whether it was dry, slick, whatever. I think I had an expectation that most people wouldn't know how to drive on these types of tracks, so I think I'm a little more lenient in that I expect people not to be able to hold a line. I think one of the biggest offenses right now is people the car gets sideways, and instead of them rolling out of the throttle and gathering the car back up and trying to keep the line that they have, they just let the car shoot back across the track, or maybe they think that the bottom right there is the line. But what they failed to forget is this isn't asphalt. And if I have traction and you do not, I catch you so fast that you changing a line is really bad. So I end up running, you can run people over, which for the most part I think I've avoided pretty well. So I kind of anticipate those things. People need to give each other more room is another one that I don't see happening a whole lot. Just because of the nature of how the cars move around. If you can't see them, I know we don't have a mirror in the sprint car or something like that, or a black box, but I really use the spotter is Only the spotter's only good for me with lap times. That's it. Calling out where the cars are is almost pointless with how it's driving. So using the relative and using the mirror really helps me figure out where everybody's at. And then, if I don't see them in my mirror, I just leave the lane open. I try not to it just helps avoid a lot of the wrecks that could happen. So as an overall, I think people are doing really well. There are times where, people kind of are a little too aggressive, or they're missing the boat as far as holding like when you're lapping a car, the lap cars, stick to a line and hold it. Even if you've got to go slower, hold that line. And I just don't think people are used to that, because dirt racing is a multi-groove racing discipline. There's so many ways you can attack the track. It's not like road racing or even a lot of oval racing to a degree. I know like some of the super speed, the larger speedways, you can get some two-groove racing, although it's not typical in iRacing, but you can. There is definitely, you can go all over the place if you know how to drive. So overall, I think people have done well. I expect that, it gets better over time.
Yeah, I'm actually been pleasantly surprised. I've been actually pretty impressed in the races I've been. There's been cautions, people getting together, but it's racing deals, honest mistakes.
Yeah.
Someone come up a corner and they get loose and don't run up into the guy coming up on the outside. Like you said, a big run. Overall, like what I've witnessed is pretty good. People are trying, and it's been, and like you mentioned, multi-groove racing. It's been really cool to see. I mean, just out there driving, you're just like, look at this shit. This is
yeah. There is nothing cooler. I mean, there is nothing cooler when I'm in a sprint car race and I'm like running wheel to wheel with somebody, lap after lap, or I'm trying to pick somebody apart and trying to figure out where they are. It's impressive when you get in those moments where you're like, dude, this is awesome. This is so cool. This feels like I'm actually racing in the real world in a sprint car. It's those are the moments that you're just like, you're almost, at least I am. I'm almost in awe of what can be accomplished with a software program, basically.
Yeah, no, it's been really impressed. I've just, like I said, I've been impressed by how quickly people have picked it up. As actually, someone like me coming from someone who I feel like so far I've been running pretty mediocre, and I go out there and I try to run the inside lines on these tracks, and it's like, oh, put me on the outside. That's much easier. Keep it gassed up. Don't have to do the combo of drag the brake, but you got to lift off the gas some, or you're never gonna make it around the corner and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's just been, in terms of online racing, it's been just in a very short amount of time some of the most competitive racing, side-by-side racing I've seen, and it's brilliant. I mean, running the wing sprint car, the 410s at Eldora, and it's like, I think it's like a 35 lap race because you can't really go much further on field with the fuel tank.
Right.
So you get these short, ultra competitive races. When there are cautions, something that's nice is the cautions clear quickly. So that's been nice. It's not nearly like when you're driving the cup car going around Michigan, and then the pit road's got to open, and it just and there's a wave around, and everyone's got to get double file, and it just feels like, like the real world, those cautions take like 3-4 laps to sort, where
yeah, this is like 2.5 laps in your back green.
Oh yeah, no, it's like a nice 60-second break, 80 seconds, and then back you're racing again. And so no, that's been really nice. And yeah, overall pretty impressed. Now, something you noted on when we're talking about graphics, and I want to talk about it here because it's been a source of challenge for me, is the different track states when you roll into a session. And it's wild, and what do you think about that? Do you like that you can roll in? I've rolled in with a very tacky track, looks like it hasn't been run on at all, and then I got into a race where it was black, and I was like, I was struggling because I never ran on anything that worn out, and I started on in the bottom lane, and I was down there crying, just I was worried I was getting in people's ways too, because I like to go and try to be hardcore, and I don't run the virtual mirror, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna do it how it's supposed to be done. But then again, I'm like, I'm so busy trying not to wreck and trying not to wash up the racetrack that I don't have time to look over at the relative. So I'm just freaked out. Where's everyone at? So what's your opinion on just you don't know what you get until you show up in a session?
I like it. Just because it's not the same every time. For consistency's sake, it may be difficult for most people, but I enjoy the and part of it is because I can read the track real quick. I can just look at the track, take a lap or two, and go, okay, it's like this, and it's going to progress, X, Y, Z. The end of race is going to get to here. I can already kind of see, and it's a bigger difference in the higher up splits when people really start knowing what they're doing. Because I've kind of gone from the gambit of like a really low D, so a D class, low I rating, and then all the way up. Now I'm like 20. I think when we started running dirt, I want to say I was like 1500, and now I'm at like 2477 or something like that.
You're just killing it in like a week and a half.
But it's interesting now to see that progression. Getting to different licenses and going up and seeing the progression, and now running in top splits. The lines wear differently, which is awesome. So even if the track starts in a different state, I have to think about the group that I'm running with, because if I'm running with guys that are less experienced, the track where I'm running typically will stay more tacky where I want to run. If I'm running with more experienced drivers, then the line that I want to run is probably the line that they're going to run, and I have to think about I may need to move my line towards the end of the race. So having that dynamic along with the random states on my end, I love it. It forces me to think differently about how to attack the track every time, instead of going, okay, I know that it's going to start at 0, and qualifying it's just going to barely start to throw that super tacky stuff off, and by the end of 30 laps we're going to get a slightly worn track, and I can adjust to it every time. This way it's like, okay, this time I'm going to try this time I'm going to try this. I mean, gear ratio now makes a bigger difference. There's all kinds of variables now that it throws at you, and I wasn't sure how they were going to do this, and I like the way they've implemented it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even though it can be a struggle at times when I show up, especially on a slick track where it just hasn't been, that rubbered up in say, an open practice session. Which is that's a kind of a funny dynamic, because it's like you get times people they run for a bit, and then after track it's really worn out, people jump out of the session. So like the practice sessions, you never quite see it, the track state where it's like black with rubber. But you can jump into a race session and have that. So I do like that. It does make things interesting. It does make you say, okay, am I going to pull out the tacky setup or the dry setup? What I need to do. And then what you were saying with, I even experienced that even being in pretty similar I rating. But when I get in splits where I'm a lower number or higher number car, lower I rating,
right.
And you can definitely tell you're racing with better drivers. It's like, yeah, much more discipline on the line and much tougher to pass, because then it's harder to go and find something different and even make up ground on them. But yeah, no, I've been just really blown away by the racing. It's been close overall. I think it's been pretty clean for what it is, well mannered, and yeah, it's just so cool to see so many cars tightly packed in there and just slipping and sliding. So I've been thoroughly impressed by it, and really it's probably all different things we talked about with the graphics and physics and setup and blah blah blah, all that coming to a culmination to where these races are really fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I hinted on the license real quick. What do you think about not launching with the dirt license? Because, I have a thought on it, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, You know, in iRacing for a long time, I really wanted them to divide up the licenses. I want them to divide it up how they have it listed on the website. If you just go to the iRacing.com, the public site, they have it by like NASCAR and prototypes and open wheel cars, and now they're and GT cars, and now there's dirt. I want to see it broken up into like that, like 5 different licenses.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I want the license per car. Some people have talked about that. But I think it's long overdue for an overhaul, and just saying, I used to run the IndyCar series, and you're bouncing between road and oval, and they would have to make it one or the other for a whole season. You know, it just never really,
Right.
it didn't work out great. So I think at some point here, they need to just bite the bullet and figure out some way to, you know, whatever, someone gets an arbitrary number that maybe doesn't represent them properly in that certain car, but I think there needs to be more detail per the types of cars.
Yeah, I would be down with that. I would be okay with that, because I think the problem they're running into now is that there's such a diverse amount of cars. You know, you may be good in one road car but not the other.
Yes.
Same thing with the oval side, and you know, admittedly, I think I'm kind of exploiting the system right now.
Yes.
With the oval side, because you know, you were getting a bunch of people in that are trying it for the first time, and especially like I'll get in a top split and I am like, you know, towards the bottom of that split, and then I'll finish third or second, or you know, even mid pack, and my I rating just goes way up. And you know, I was able to leapfrog a license. I'm on the verge of, you know, hitting another license, and so that would be like 2 licenses mid-season. But now the thing that I don't want to do is go run the asphalt side, because my I rating would go down.
Well, it's not the end of the world, but
No, but I mean, I'm just thinking, if you are a person that is, I don't really care.
Sure. But if you do care,
So when I get my, but if you do, that's my point, is if you do care, and like right now, once I get to an A license or whatever, I don't think I'll really care at that point anymore. But I do like being in the top split. So for that person that really likes running at the top with everybody else, I think it's almost going to discourage people from running dirt, or vice versa, because you're going to lose I rating. You know, for people that care. And, you know, you can make the argument that you shouldn't care, but, I mean, ask those guys that run the Pro Series with the Pro license, ask them if they care or not. Because I've had a couple of my races that I've beat, and it's like, oops. You know, when they're at a 6,000 I rating or whatever, and here I am, my lowly 2,000, and, you know, is that really fair? And I don't think that's really fair. Because, like I said, I mean, I'm doing it because it's letting me, but it almost feels like an exploitation of the system right now.
Yeah, sure. Oh, you know, something else is kind of fascinating. We didn't touch on this in damage, but the damage credits, tokens, whatever you want to count.
That was next on my list, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So for dirt racing, they just halved it. So instead of getting a 2x, you get a 1x. Instead of getting a 4x, you get a 2x. You know, the fascinating thing is, in my races, I had a race where I spun out and got hit, and I was able to keep going. I was laps down because I took a toad, because I thought like damage, I thought it was totaled, and I was kind of okay. But other races, you know, I've had some rubbing with people and some banging and stuff like that, and I'm kind of like, okay, I would think normally I'd walk out of there with kind of no gain, kind of probably a zero-sum race. I come out of there increasing my safety rating. So so far that having it has actually helped me out. I wonder if you're seeing the same thing, or if you've had some incidents where you're more frustrated by it.
So I'm on both ends of the spectrum. When I was a D license, it went up really fast. And then it's now I'm stuck at like a 385, and like if I just have any minor bump with anybody, it's catastrophic. I can't go anywhere now, and I don't know if that's because it doesn't want, you know, it needs to be harder to make another mid-season jump in a license, so it kind of scales it or something. But it's definitely, I was having contact before that I'm having now, and it's not you know, the safety rating isn't consistent in my eyes. So having the 2x, why don't we have a 2x on short tracks with stock cars? You know, there's some odd kind of things. Well, you're supposed to have more contact, but aren't you supposed to have contact with the stock cars?
Sure.
So I don't know if that's necessarily. I think it kind of throws you off because they also increased the amount of points too. They went from 17 to 20. So not only did they kill 4Xs, they bumped up the amount of points, which I'm okay with that. I wouldn't mind leaving the 2X and 4X alone because then you can't tell what should have happened. Does that make sense? So, in other words, a smack against the wall that damages the car is worth the same as touching the wall and getting a 2X and still continuing. So you get a 2X either way. And it's kind of like, well, that doesn't feel right because I got the same amount of hit points. So to me, it's a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, I mean, like I said, from my experience, I could almost have it be the same, and it wouldn't really affect me. I'd kind of be okay with it because I will say, I think it does a good job right now when we're talking about when you kind of rub on someone, come off a corner, and kind of slide into someone. It does a good job giving you that 0x, which, you know,
yes,
that's how it is.
It does, yes.
That's how it is out in, you know, the standard asphalt, oval, and road course. You know, if you gently touch something, you get a 0x.
Yes.
So that's still transferring through. So yeah, to some degree, I'm kind of like, if they just kept it on the same scale, I'd be fine. Again, it kind of feels like I'm almost mining safety rating to to some degree running dirt. The way you're mining for iRating, going out there and beating guys with a bunch higher iRatings to establish that on asphalt.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's interesting. It's kind of little things. Like again, it's to some degree it's how much you put into it. But you know, because it is.
Well,
I
mean, it's what's important to you, right? If you don't
right.
care, like I went into it with the mindset that I didn't really care, and then all of a sudden I saw that I was like rocketing up. I'm like, oh crap! Like I can get this C license in like 8 races or whatever it was.
Well, that is the difference too. You know, I've been sitting at A license forever on road and oval, and it's no big deal. And you have to like really try to drop out of it, in my opinion. Where you're still trying to go up the ladder, so it matters a little more from your perspective.
Right.
So I think let's put a pin in that. Overall, racing has been just awesome. And yeah, let's go ahead and put a final takeaway on dirt oval racing in iRacing. Billy, final thoughts here. What do you think of what they got? What are you hoping for the future, etc.?
I think they've done. I'll reiterate that it's excellent. They've done a really, really good job. Like I said, any of the minor complaints, I hope, again, people don't misunderstand what I'm getting at when I'm kind of pointing out these few little things. Those are minor things that, yeah, I mean, if you're a hardcore fan, might bother you. But overall, I think the experience, I think what they're delivering, that experience of driving on dirt in these multiple disciplines, whether it's the trucks, the legends, the late models, the sprint cars, the street stock, it does a good job of giving you the idea of what it's like to drive on dirt, and I think that is the most important factor. And the fact that they got like a dynamic track in there, it's just what they've accomplished with this is pretty amazing. I would say. Yeah, so really just overall an excellent job. Any small grievances that I have, I don't think outweigh the effort, work that have been put into this to make it as good as it is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all those points. Overall, super excellent, super clean rollout. You know, no issues, no major issues. It came out, people jumped on. Like I said, I think the community did a great job of understanding what this is. You know, people, anytime someone wrecks, like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, a lot of times the other person comes on, like, oh, it's fine, I understand. You know, didn't mean to do it. So yeah, no, I just overall really a top-notch rollout, and to be able to jump in and have such great racing right away has been fantastic. And as we mentioned, a couple little things that kind of more on wish list items that would be nice to see. You know, maybe iron out some of these other things with the safety rating and iRating, and the damage model. This is some kind of larger overall iRacing conversations than just dirt. But very good. As far as going forward, I really hope to see the content keep getting pumped out. I hope we see a wingless sprint car. I hope we get to see more tracks. I'd like to imagine that these tracks, with them being fairly small, aren't going to take too much effort to put out. It's not like it's going to be when they were doing Nordschleife or Le Mans and they were just working on it for like a year. I like to think that these things could get popped out a lot quicker.
It'd be wonderful to have a season's worth of tracks and stuff. Yeah, that would be really awesome.
I want to see him go scan the Chili Bowl. That's what I want to see.
Well, then we need midgets. The cars.
Yeah, exactly. So, which I don't remember if they've said yes or no on wing.
I don't know if I've heard a definitive answer. I know we are getting non-wing sprint cars, and they do have rallycross also at some point that they're going to try to do. But yeah, midgets. You could go with the big block or the IMCA modifieds too. I think those would be a lot of fun as well. And then, like you said, pumping out some more dirt tracks would really be cool. Even if they did like a Silver Crown car that we could run on some of the bigger tracks would also be neat.
Yeah, no, and that is kind of a nice thing with this. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the vehicles out now, they've kind of already captured the major, a good majority of what dirt racing's out there. So it's not like with the rest of the service with asphalt racing, when they've spent nearly a decade now putting out stock cars and F1 cars and Indy cars and GT cars and prototypes and all these different types. They've, drop of the hat, first release here, they've gotten a pretty good swath of the cars out there. So
yeah, it's a real good representation of what dirt track racing is, I think.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome to come out with a strong foundation like that, and yeah, more tracks, and that'd be awesome. Tracks are good.
Yes, they are.
So with that, I think let's go ahead and wrap up this review of iRacing Dirt. I think the general consensus here is that it's very good, and you should definitely go and check it out. So thank you for watching Inside Sim Racing. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Check out our website, isrtv.com, and also check out our Amazon affiliate links in the description below. Click on the link, shop through Amazon. Doesn't cost you a thing, kicks back a little bit towards us. So I'm John Sable for Billy Strange. Thanks for watching Inside Sim Racing. See you guys next time. Oh, hey there. Welcome back. I'm glad to see you still sticking around, especially for that kind of longish review we just had. But hopefully you enjoyed that review, and then thank you for even staying past my little bit at the end about liking, subscribing, check out the website, and shopping through Amazon, because that Amazon bit, that actually does help us out. So because you help us out, and you're such a good viewer, and you watch this entire video, we're going to do something for you. And we are giving away some subscriptions to iRacing. So for new members, not current members, new members, we have 2 one-year subscriptions to iRacing. That's pretty amazing. We also have 3 3-month subscriptions to iRacing for new members as well. And then for you guys who are currently already iRacing members, we're going to throw you a bone, and we have one $25 credit to you that you can go and spend in iRacing, and hopefully spend on some of this new dirt content, because it's pretty sweet. So how is this going to work? It's going to work by, in the description in this YouTube video, go ahead and click on the link that will take you back to the written review on our website. And in that written review, we will have a link to our forums to this show's topic. Once you're in the topic, go ahead and, well, if you haven't signed up for the forums, go ahead and sign up for our forums. And then what are you doing not being on our forums? So much great stuff there. Come on, do better. So go ahead into that link on our forums, comment on the video. Say if you like it, if you didn't like it, what do you think about dirt racing and iRacing? Make it a meaningful comment. If it's, it doesn't be long, but you're going to go there and just like write a period or say your name or something, not going to get selected. Not doing it. And then after 1 week, I'm going to go to that post, see how many different posts there are, and go and put that in a random number generator. It's going to spit out some numbers, and then if you happen to be one of those post numbers that matches up, I will contact you, because I have your email when you sign up on the forums, and I will let you know that you have won either a new subscription to iRacing or if you're a current member, a $25 credit. So again, thank you for watching Inside Sim Racing, being a fan of the show, and thanks to iRacing for helping us hook some of you guys up. That's pretty awesome.